Good afternoon, and welcome to the Wednesday afternoon conference call with Trusts Unlimited. This is Jim George speaking. I'm the non-attorney spokesman and facilitator for Trusts Unlimited, and I'd like to thank all of you for taking the time to listen to this call. Today is February 28th, 2024. There's a lot going on. I'm going to touch on a lot of subjects. If the things we discuss are of interest, I certainly hope you'll subscribe to our weekly calls and share them with the like-minded individuals. I'm not sure how this call is going to go today. A lot of information's coming in. As a matter of fact, just before I got onto this call myself, more stuff was coming in. So I'm trying to collate it and put it together in some sort of a coherent format, but I think I'm going to fail miserably at that because there's just too much going on. We've also been slammed with contacts from any number of individuals, so we'll just do the best we can. I have a lot of individuals that I need to contact via phone or email. I'm sorry that I haven't gotten back to some of you sooner, but again, we're going between 50 and 60 contacts a day, and even to speak to someone for 10 or 15 minutes just, wipes out the whole day. So, again, I'm doing the best I can, and all I can say is when this call is done, I will be back on the phone. So let's go ahead and get started. First, by way of disclaimer, Trusts Unlimited is not the purveyor of the dinar and these other currencies, but is rather substantial currency holders ourselves. We're sharing with you the information we believe to be most relevant. And, of course, the most relevant piece of information would be the window for the potential reinstitution of the dinar. In my opinion, we're done. It's over. It's just a matter of when they flip the switch. Actually, once they outlawed officially the dollar in Iraq, effective January 1st of this year, they reached, in my opinion, officially the point of no return. That was the day when those of us paying close attention know that there were only two remaining options: either reinstitute their currency or become a failed nation state. There is no third option. Sovereign nation must have a sovereign currency, but failing that, they must at least be operating with a reserve currency. So once they eliminated the use of the USD as a reserve currency, then they're only left with, again, those two options. Some other things are going on, too. They've negotiated multiple international contracts for all manner of infrastructure work in Iraq, which, again, they don't have the USD to fund. Certainly they don't have enough USD to fund those contracts and their budget. And the dinar at 1310 won't accomplish anything. Therefore, everyone's operating with the assumption that the currency will reinstitute very shortly. As I've said many times on the call, not only in my opinion are they operating under that assumption, but they're operating under an assumptive rate, the rate that the dinar will eventually fall at. The country has also expanded dramatically its electronic banking globally, which once again makes no sense. They're not going to be involved in substantial global trade, and in order to do that, they're going to need a currency. And lastly, they've made great efforts in the areas of monetary reform. And we have to go all the way back to Dr. Shabibi, who was the governor of the central bank from September of 2003 until October of 2012. And much of what's going on right now was initially implemented by him, but then, of course, stopped for a number of reasons. Unfortunately, at the time, we had Maliki, who was the prime minister of Iraq, and we had Obama, who was the president of the United States. Both were decidedly pro-Iranian, and for that reason, they were not particularly enthusiastic about Iraq breaking the bonds from Iran and functioning as a sovereign nation. But despite their efforts, it seems the best they've been able to do is defer the inevitable. However, it is a shame that this could not have been done many years ago, particularly for those of us that have currencies. We would love to have been at the bank's 5 or 10 years ago and been doing other things today, but it is what it is. So let's get back to the subject at hand. I want to talk a little bit about Prime Minister Soudani and the CBI operations that have been going on recently. Now, the overall picture is that we're witnessing the transition of Iraq to a fully sovereign nation state, which necessarily must include a sovereign currency. And as I said before, they've begun the process irrevocably by outlawing the use of the USD and foreign currencies, with the exception of medical expenses and travel outside of the country. That means that effective January 1st of this year, the Iraqi citizens, in essence, have no purchasing power because they can't utilize the dollar to exchange for goods and services, and they can't go too far with the dinar 1310. And this is the reason that there needs to be a change. Now, Iraq is a parliamentary system of governance, although it is an extremely complicated one, largely because of the vestiges of the tribal culture. But because it's a parliamentary system, the citizens at some point are not going to be able to accept not having a currency that they can exchange for goods and services. They're going to put pressure on the parliament to have a no-confidence vote, meaning that Soudani's government would be replaced. And, of course, we don't want to see that happen because this would probably bump all of this back up 2 or 3 years. But no one wants to see that. Soudani doesn't want to see it. His cabinet doesn't want to see it. The citizens of Iraq don't want to see it. Certainly all of the people that have entered into contracts with Iraq don't want to see it. There are, unfortunately, some pro-Iranian officials in the parliament that would love to see that. But fortunately, they're now so few in number, I don't think they have the juice to make that happen. But the CBI is hard at work, completing the economic and banking reforms. They're working with the IMF and the World Bank to complete those few remaining monetary reforms. And ascension to the World Organization seems imminent at this point. Now, joining the World Trade Organization doesn't necessarily mean that they have to have their own sovereign currency, but it does mean that that currency needs to come out of sanction, which would, again, mean that the currency would most likely float in an international basket. It could be the IMF, UNA, and the BRICS. There are other places or all of the above. So we'll just have to see. But whether they come out at a rate or they come out at, say, 1-to-1 with the dollar, I think the dinar will very rapidly find its equilibrium at a Basel IV compliant rate, which, in my opinion, should be north of $4. But until that happens, Iraq is in limbo, and it's in need of immediate change in the exchange rate for a number of reasons. First, they cannot continue to fund the budget without a rate, again, because they're spread so thin. They do have over 100 billion USD in reserve, but they can't fund the budget, fund the multinational contracts with that amount. They're going to need to revalue their currency. They want to implement the hydrocarbon law, the oil and gas law, to provide relief for its citizens. Well, they need an exchange rate in order to do that. They want to fund the international contracts. Once again, they're going to need their own rate. They also want to release the lower denoms and issue the cards to the citizens. They're doing everything they can to collect the 3-0 provisional notes. But having accomplished this, and of course through the HCL, citizens are going to participate in the sale of petroleum globally. They're going to need their salaries, and they're going to need their retirement. And all of that, the prerequisite for all of that, once again, must be the new national sovereign currency, which can only be effective with a change in the exchange rate. And then lastly, they want to expand the private sector. And again, that's going to be impossible without their new sovereign currency. So For these reasons, to me, it's done. It's just a matter of when they flip the switch. They've put everything in place that they need to proceed. They just have to go ahead and dot a few I's, cross a few T's, and we're done. I would be shocked if we're not done, certainly within 60 days and probably within the next 30. I actually would be surprised if we're not done within the next 30 days. Actually, I think they intended on getting this done in January or February at the latest. So now they'd love to get this done, I believe, in the first quarter, although most revaluations of currencies over the last 100 years have occurred in April and September. January, April, and September. That's because countries either operate where their fiscal budget's the calendar year or their fiscal budget begins in April. So, again, they'd love to have it done, I'm sure, by April 1st. In my opinion, that is what's going to happen. But that doesn't mean it's going to be at $4. What it means is at the very least, they're going to be in a basket and it's going to float. But if it goes in a basket and floats at, say, 1-to-1, in my opinion, within a matter of weeks, be north of $4. So that's where we are today. This is good news. There are individuals that contact us and say, hey, I just learned about the Iraqi dinar a couple months ago. Someone told me to listen to your call, and I did, and so I want to get a trust package. Then we have other individuals that have been with us for 15 years, have had currencies for longer than that, have been through, all of the ups and downs and the roller coaster ride that we've been on. But if you're paying close attention, Iraq over the last year has been methodically checking all of the boxes. And again, I'll just say it again. In my opinion, the outlaw of the U.S. dollar in Iraq, effective January 1st, was the point of no return. It's just a matter, as I said, of when they flip the switch. And if it happens tomorrow, I would love to see that. But I honestly wouldn't be surprised because everything that they're doing right now points in that direction. Now, I'm very briefly going to touch on the trust package that we've put in place. And the reason we did this for specifically Dinarians is because of the work that we've been doing for decades, and we understand when individuals come into a windfall, more often than not, they lose that windfall for any number of reasons. Mismanagement, litigation, tax issues, bad business decisions, and other things of that nature. So by establishing a family asset protection trust package, you're going to put a wall around this wealth and protect it. And I want to touch on just some of the benefits that a trust package can provide. I'm moving quickly today for two reasons. Number one, because, as I said, I've got a number of calls to make. And number two, because unfortunately we're under a tornado warning, and though you can't hear it, things are really kicking up outside. So I've got other things that I've got to get to. But let's go ahead and talk a little bit about our package. By establishing a family asset protection trust package, you're going to preserve your privacy and your anonymity. That's because the assets within the trust are sealed, and no one will have any knowledge, of your net worth or actual holdings. Second, by avoiding such a package, you're going to avoid IRS scrutiny. The assets are in trust. You receive the benefits of those assets, but they're in trust, and the IRS tends to avoid sophisticated trust packages. They'd rather go after the low-hanging fruit, individuals that are self-employed, maybe small organizations or small businesses. That's a much easier target for them, but they tend to avoid sophisticated trust packages. Second reason you'd want to establish this trust package is because it allows you not only to give currencies to family and friends prior to the evaluation, but also allows you to control the post-RV proceeds. And that's going to be important for individuals in families that, they may be children, they may be irresponsible, they may be individuals that are inexperienced at managing money, they may be individuals that have disabilities. But in any event, you can both gift the pre-RV currencies to avoid a federal gift tax and at the same time have control of the post-RV proceeds. But that can only be accomplished through the trust. Fourth benefit is this trust will allow you to avoid the cost and delay of probate and the federal estate tax. Now, probate is a public disclosure process, so everything you own in the transfer of your wealth to heirs become a matter of public record. But if it's in trust, it remains in trust for the benefit of your heirs. There is no probate. There is no public disclosure of your wealth. The other issue is the federal estate tax. The federal estate tax under the current law can be as high as 65% of your estate in excess of $12 million. But if you transfer the wealth through the trust, there is no transfer of the asset. It remains a trust for the benefit of the heirs. Therefore, there is no federal estate tax. Your heirs will receive 100 cents on a dollar because your estate is in trust versus being out of trust. Lastly, this trust provides asset protection both pre- and post-RV. Pre-RV, you enjoy circumvention from the Uniform Fraudulent Transfer Act, meaning this. Once you transfer the currencies to the trust, that means you could only be sued for the value at the time of the transfer, not the value of the currencies post-RV. So if you have, for example, 10 million dinar that you paid $10,000 for, you transfer them to the trust. They subsequently revalue for, let's say, $1. Keep it simple, $10 million. You can't be sued personally for $10 million. You can only be sued personally for $10,000 because that's all the currency was worth when you transferred it to the trust. Post-RV, there's a benefit I like to refer to as limited liability stop loss. This protects you from future bad acts after you have acquired this wealth. This protects you through a strategy referred to as segregation of assets. This is why we have a family of trusts and why we refer to as our family asset protection trust package. Basically, each asset that you own will go into a separate subtrust, your homes, cars, boats, whatever you own. So as an example, you have an accident in your car. The accident's your fault. The injured party wants to sue you, but you don't own anything, so they're left to sue the owner of the car. Well, who owns that car? Merely one of the sub-trusts within the package of which you're the beneficiary. So the plaintiff in the case, the injured party, would enter into negotiations with the insurance company insuring your car, but they don't have access to your other net assets and net worth because all of those other assets are in separate sub-trusts, which under the law are separate legal entities or persons. So the trust package works a little bit like a commercial barge where all of the valuable cargo is stored in a series of small compartments. Why? In the event that any compartment is ever breached, the only potential loss would be the cargo in that one compartment. The cargo in the other compartments is safe and secure due to the firewalls, and the barge will never sink. So those are the benefits that this trust provides, and there's no other way you can provide such benefits. LLCs and sub-S corporations provide some asset protection, but nothing coming close to that available with our trust. In addition, LLCs and sub-S corporations are statutory, meaning they're regulated state by state. So everyone will have all of the information about those entities, who owns them, what they have, what the net worth of the assets are. In addition, sub-S corporations and LLCs that are owned in the majority by an individual or closely held group can be pierced for civil litigation. Once again, that's not the case with our trust package. And this trust is registered nowhere, no city, no county, no state. It's completely and totally private. There's a firewall around it. And there's no other asset available that provides such benefits. Now, our trust package is initially a package of 10 trusts that will consist of one master trust that will hold assigned currencies pre-RV and financial accounts like bank accounts and investment accounts post-RV. One optional gift sub-trust if you wish to give currencies to family and friends and control the post-RV proceeds. And that sub-trust can be utilized as a standard sub-trust, along with 8 additional standard sub-trusts to hold assets like homes, cars, boats, etc. Now, this was the simplification of a rather sophisticated trust package that we've utilized in the past for our more affluent clients, a package that had an initial cost of anywhere from $6,000 to $10,000. But when we decided to work with denarians, we knew that price tag would be unaffordable for too many. So by basically simplifying the package and waiting to fund it post-RV, we've been able to reduce the cost to $3,000. There's several ways you can pay for that. Pay us up front. We'll discount the price further to $2,500. If that's not possible, we even have a deferred payment arrangement. You'd make an initial payment of $525, which would basically offset our out-of-pocket costs just to produce and deliver your trust package to you. The balance of the $3,000 would then be paid with $100 monthly installments. We have a third option. Pay us up front with a credit card. Not only will you get the $500 discount, but the minimum payment on your credit card would be substantially less than what you would pay under our deferred payment arrangement. But again, we'll work with you in whatever method works best for you. Our objective is to help you get your affairs in order and your trust enforced prior to the revaluation of these currencies for all of the reasons that we've discussed here. And I think I can say in good conscience that time is really running thin. So I would suggest you contact us, and I will give you our contact information and investigate the benefits in a little bit more detail. We're going to go to the Q&A in just a moment, but before we do, I'd like to tell you just a little bit about Trusts Unlimited and why you should seriously consider contacting us to get our initial no-obligation package. Our trust package was offered by our attorney, Robert Bly. He's been practicing estate planning, asset protection, and offshore planning for over 40 years, and he's well-known nationally. I myself hold degrees in political science, macroeconomics, and finance. I've worked in these areas for over 40 years myself, and I was involved in the revaluation of the Kuwaiti dinar in the early 90s, so this is my first rodeo, and I know how this works. And I will say this, just prior to the revaluation, or the reinstitution, rather, of the Kuwaiti dinar, we were told that it would be at least a year before that would occur, and within 10 days it happened. And I feel the same way right now that I did, I guess it's 30 years ago now, with the Kuwaiti dinar. But there's something you need to understand. Under our system of civil procedure, it's when you hold assets in direct title that you can lose control of them or lose them outright. And it's at precisely those times in life that you need and want control. If you've lived for any length of time, you've either experienced in your own life or through friends and family things like unexpected divorce, permanent incapacitation, the onset of dementia, premature death and prolonged and complicated probate processes. Then there are investment losses, business losses, and even bankruptcies. The number 2 loss of wealth, now courtesy of the information age in the aggregate, is information and identity theft. But the number 1 loss of personal wealth remains confiscation through civil litigation. Anything you own in direct title can be taken from you. So the only way that you can manage, protect, and control everything at all times and in all circumstances, and particularly if you're an individual with currencies who expect a rather substantial windfall, is to establish a package of family asset protection trusts. And we at Trusts Unlimited will do everything we can to help you accomplish your personal and financial objectives, both pre- and post-RV, as we understand them. So thanks so much for listening today. I am going to go to a brief Q&A. Let me open the Q&A. And while I'm waiting for any potential questions, If you'd like to get our initial no-obligation package, you can contact us by either email or phone. Now, the package does contain everything you need if you wish to proceed with the establishment of your family asset protection trust package, but you're under absolutely no obligation to do so. The package has a lot of information about us, about the currencies, about the trusts, about services both pre and post RV. You can review the package. Contact us if you have any questions. We'll be happy to assist you. If you do wish to proceed, again, everything you need is included in the package. You return the package to us. We will proceed with the establishment of your family asset protection trust. If there's anything that needs clarification, I will call you personally, resolve that issue, and then proceed with the completion and the delivery of your trust package to you. You can contact us by email, which is trusts with an S, unlimited LLC @gmail.com, or by our phone service, which is 307-274-4122. We do have some questions in the queue, so I'm going to go ahead and open the queue. Our first caller is area code 619. That's 619. Go ahead.
Hey, buddy Jim, it's Eddie. How are you?
How you doing, Eddie? What's up?
I'm doing good, bud. I'm doing good. Hey, two quick questions. Two quick questions for you. One, have you heard anything, and I didn't hear this myself, but have you heard anything about when you go open up a new bank account now and you go to exchange, they won't exchange your currencies for up to a year? Have you heard any rumor about that?
No, I've heard nothing like that. And if a bank told me that, I would ask them to give me the name of their litigation attorney, because taxes are due on that money, and if they hold my money so that I cannot pay the tax and I get 100% penalty, so if I owe $1 in taxes and now I owe $2 counting the penalties, I'm going to sue them for treble damages, $6. That's the most, I've heard a lot of things, but this is just, if this were true, this would be another reason to find some other way to exchange the currency, because first of all, banking regs, they can't, that's your money. Banking law doesn't permit them to hold your money. As a matter of fact, what I think the banks are going to try to do is try to slip you a deposit slip to put a 10 or 21-day hold on your money, and I'm going to be, that's not going to happen. That's my money. Banking law, when that money's available at 3 days, I want access to my money. So I've not heard that. I wouldn't be surprised because there's a lot of crazy stuff floating around, but I don't see any way legally or ethically a bank can get away with that.
Okay. And then the other thing I want to understand, Jim, with regards to registration of the trust, when you go get your tax ID number, you're not registering it there, like in the state of California or whatever. Isn't that considered registration of where you're located, where your trust is?
The only thing the EIN number does is establish that it's a separate legal financial entity. It has to operate with a number. Now, if you set up, for example, a revocable trusts are statutory, regulated state by state, and they operate with the Social Security number of the grantor. But with an irrevocable trust, it operates with a separate EIN number, but that trust doesn't have to be registered anywhere. In other words, the state, city, or county, they don't know who you are, what's in the trust, who the beneficiaries of. They don't know any of that because they're not privy to that information.
Gotcha. I just wanted to clear that up. Thank you so much. I appreciate it, buddy. I'll let you go and let some other people ask questions.
Okay, take care, Eddie. Bye-bye now. Okay, our next caller is area code 208. That's 208. Go ahead.
Yes. Can you hear me, Jim?
Yes, sir.
Two quick questions. Thanks for your time this morning.
Sure.
With Ramadan being from March 10th to April 9th, what influence will that have or not have with the reinstatement?
I'm not saying it's impossible that it would happen during Ramadan, but I would think they would want to do it before Ramadan. So that's another reason. And you know what? I kind of thought about that last night, and I don't know, there was so much going on, I forgot about it, and I didn't check the dates. But based on the culture, it seems to me that they would want to get it done before Ramadan. But, okay, let's say that for whatever reason they don't want it during Ramadan. Well, the worst-case scenario would be April. In January, April, and September have been the 3 months where over the last 100 years we've seen revaluations. I don't want to see it in April. I want to see it sooner than that. On the other hand, if it happens in April, that means whatever the taxes are, they wouldn't be due until July. Whereas if it happens in March, taxes would be due on April 15th. Now, if it happens in early March before, say, Ramadan, that's fine. That gives us time to, kind of compel the IRS to tell us exactly what the tax implications are. Failing that, I'm paying the ordinary income tax. Anyone else is on their own, but that's what I'm going to do. But if it happened on April 5th, on April 14th, even though taxes are due on the 15th, we're already in that quarter, so no taxes would be due until July. So I want to see it before March 10th, but if not, April is good too.
Still a good situation. Very good.
Yes, sir.
Thank you for that. My second question has to do with when. I shouldn't say when, because we've already assigned, as you have instructed, currencies to the trust with the form that you supplied. My question is, as people buy additional currency, do you have to go back and redo all of that, or just do a second form?
It's not necessarily a bad idea to do a second form, but if you look at the language closely, it says something to the effect that any and all currencies, pre-valued currencies in my possession or that I should subsequently acquire is hereby assigned to the trust. Now, so that means you're theoretically covered with any future purchase. However, there is a line in there where you list not the amounts, but the currencies that you hold. So if, for example, you have dinar and dong and you have no other currency, and then you purchase another currency, then you're going to want to add, I'm just making up stuff now, and let's say you purchase some Indonesian rupiah. Well, and you don't have rupiah listed on there, then you want to go back to that form and add rupiah. So it says dinar, dong, and rupiah, and you should be good. But if you're concerned, some individuals, for example, purchased, 3 million dinar, and then 10 years later, they purchase 2 million more. If you've got that kind of a gap, it's not a bad idea to create another form for that purchase just to make absolutely sure. And again, only because if you're ever audited by the IRS, I can't really give you my opinion of who those folks are, but you just want to cover yourself by, if you purchased a substantial tranche, then maybe it's not a bad idea just to fill out another form. What's it going to take you, 3 minutes? Just do that.
Right. Very, very good. That fine lines that for me, Jim. I appreciate it. I'll let you go, but
certainly.
Thanks again, my friend, for all you do.
Sure. Thank you. Take care. Bye-bye now. Okay, our next caller is area code 727. That's 727. Go ahead.
Good morning, Jim. This is Jim Stibbe from Tarpon Springs, Florida, calling in. We've talked before.
Yes, sir. How are you, my friend? Yes, sir.
Very good. Thank you. I'm calling in about all of the chatter and scuttlebutt going on about removing the 3 zeros. I know we've talked about this before, and in your opinion. My question is, how do we move this beyond opinion to precedent and fact? And whether the IMF, International Monetary Fund, or other regulatory bodies can control what's happening outside of Iraq. I know you talked about the distinction between domestically and then internationally, but could we dig a little deeper so we have more confidence that if I got a $25,000 dinar note, that's the value rather than 25? Have I phrased that question well for you?
You have, and it would not be honest of me to say that such a calamity is not possible. I guess it would be possible, but the repercussions for Iraq would be very bad for a number of reasons. A lot of central banks hold the dinar, inclusive of the United States. A lot of the international hedge funds hold the Iraqi 3-0 provisional dinar. A lot of very high-profile billionaires hold the provisional 3-0, and about 10 million Americans, pursuant to Executive Order 13303, hold the provisional 3-0 currency. And there's no way that we're going to get screwed on this deal, and I'll tell you why. Because it's not Iraq that's coming up with the money. When you go to the bank, you exchange those currencies for U.S. dollars. It's the U.S. Treasury that's making good on the 3-0s. The United States then utilizes those provisional 3-0 currencies to cut whatever deal they want with Iraq, because those three provisional 3-0 currencies will be retired by the CBI, but in exchange for something between the United States government and Iraq. But remember, it's not Iraq that's honoring the 3-0s. It's us. It's our Treasury that's honoring them. So when you go to the bank to exchange, and believe me, if the 3-0s were not going to be in play for us, the banks would know that. And if the banks in the United States would know that, they wouldn't be putting on all of the dog and pony shows they're putting on. I get bank stories now. I mean, years went by and I didn't get one bank story. I get 3 or 4 of them a day. And I was involved in one myself at my bank. I happened to bank at Truist, our firm's at Truist, and they approached me simply because they knew who Trusts Unlimited was, and they asked me if we did anything with Mideastern currency. They asked me. So that tells me that the provisional 3-0s are in play for us.
Good. That raises the confidence interval a little bit more that we can count on. We got 25,000 and not 25. So thank you for expanding on that. I'm going to sleep a little bit better tonight knowing that, and thanks for all you do.
Certainly. You take care. Bye-bye now. Okay, our next caller is area code 808. That's 808. Go ahead.
Hi, Jim. It's Daisy from Hawaii.
Daisy, how are you?
So glad you did. I'm doing good.
That's good. You're always doing good.
It's been a long while. Well, you and I have been in this for quite a while now. And
yes.
I do have a small dilemma. And I was hoping that you could call me back and this is over. I just have to know what I can do about this issue I have.
Okay, let me write down your phone number here, and I will call you after this call is done, okay?
Thank you.
Okay, Daisy. Talk to you soon. Bye-bye.
All right.
Our next caller is, who have I missed here? Anyone? Oh, here. Our next caller is area code 509. That's 509. Go ahead.
Good day, Jim. This is Art in the left coast, out on the left coast. I'm doing well. Yeah, I've got a couple quick questions, and that is, once the trust is established, but you don't intuitively open up an account with the bank, as you have given us guidance on, is there a requirement that we have to, on a yearly basis, say at the end of December 2023, have a meeting with the trustees, the protector, grantors, just even if it lasts 10 minutes and it's on telephonically, and then you record that. There is.
We're going to once the dinar reinstitutes in country, we'll stop marketing the trust and deal with all those specific trust questions. But in answer to your question, you should have periodic meetings. And if you have an active trust, in other words, you go to the bank, you do your exchange, the USD goes into your trust bank account, you transfer the assets you wish to keep to the trust, you purchase new assets utilizing the sub-trust, you will be actively involved with the trustee anyway, and there won't be a need to have an annual meeting because it's dormant. There's nothing going on. You'll be meeting anyway. But some of these meetings are perfunctory, meaning you're just getting together and, everything okay? Yeah. Everything okay on your end? Yeah. Okay. That's it. So sometimes there's a lot going on and sometimes there's nothing going on. A lot of times you get it all set up the way you want. You've made the purchases you want. You have regular transfers from your trust banking to your personal checking, so you operate on a daily basis with your ATM, paying your bills. You have your liquidity, whatever you want to do, and everything's fine. So there's almost no reason for a meeting. But again, we'll get into the specifics of that after the reinstitution of the dinar.
Okay. And secondly, how is the onset of the QFS? How will that complement the trust?
It won't. The answer would be the same as if you didn't have a trust. It's a separate. It's a separate entity. It doesn't have anything directly to do with the trust. It will have the way. It will involve the way you do business in the future, but that's irrespective of whether you have a trust or not.
Okay. Well, thank you. That was real quick and done and good.
Yeah.
Thank you. Have a good day now, sir.
Okay. Take care, Art. Bye-bye now. Okay. Our next caller is area 443. That's 443. Go ahead.
Hi, Jim. This is
Hello.
Gina from Maryland.
Yes. How are you?
I'm good. How about yourself?
So busy. It's crazy over here, but that's okay. That's the job.
Yeah, I don't know. Well, yeah, here we are. Another week goes by, right? Another month,
right.
Another quarter.
They're running out of things to defer this. Let's put it that way.
Yeah, I know. It's inevitable. It's just, and then when it happens, we'll probably all be panicking because we'll be like, "Are we doing it right? Do we know what to do?" Or
we won't believe it. We'll keep saying we'll be driving to the bank going, "This isn't happening." We'll do the exchange, and we'll be driving home saying it didn't happen. We'll get our statement and say this isn't happening.
Right. This doesn't happen to just little people like me. But I just happened to be looking through my documentation as I was listening to some of the questions, and looking through the just the main document, which is the asset management program. I see that one of the sections is the duration or like the lifespan of the trust, and it says here that mine says that it will continue for a period of 14 years from the date, unless the trustee shall unanimously determine an earlier dissolution date. So at some point, we're going to have to revisit these and address that, right?
That's another perfunctory. Right. That's another perfunctory issue. If no one, it explains what's necessary in order to dissolve. If you don't dissolve, then all you have to do is get together and say we elect not to dissolve, and then it's re-up for another 14 years. It creates a backdoor, and it's because with the passage of time, things do change. It does create a backdoor if necessary, but it's up to you to open it and walk through it, or close it and leave the thing in force for another 14 years. And again, that's another thing that will be discussed in a little bit more detail after the review. There's a number of things we want to discuss: the flight provision, offshore options, all kinds of things we want to discuss, but we're putting the cart before the horse here. The first thing we want to do is make sure that the currencies are assigned to the trust and that the USD at the point of exchange does not go into a personal account, but goes into the trust bank account established that day at that bank. Then all of the other operational issues we can discuss in detail.
Yeah. I mean, because I do have concerns about down the road. With my circumstances and my children and stuff, I foresee for a very long period of time that a trustee will be someone who is not one of my children, a separate person who has, in the event that, And then after my husband and I are no longer here, I want it to continue on, and
right.
And I want it to continue, and it will continue to again probably a trustee that is not one of my children, because I have my I have concerns about how do I put this nicely? I've
sat in rooms with families. I understand what you're saying.
Yeah.
I tell you, some of the bad things happen, you wouldn't believe it. But the advantage of the trust is we all tend to live with the illusion that we're in complete control, and we're not. What the trust does, it allows you a lot more control than you would ordinarily have without the trust. But then people begin to think, well, what happens if I'm incapacitated or pass away? Then that level of control I've now ceded to someone else. That's not necessarily the case, because there are options available to beneficiaries, to family members that are not specifically the trustee. Trustees cannot do whatever they want. When an individual is totally incapacitated or passes away, the trust then becomes basically unamendable. It's static. So everyone would need to be in agreement on how to proceed if they want to do anything beyond specifically what the trust dictates. That's also why, despite the fact that you have a trust, you should still have wills, powers of attorneys, medical directives, and all of those things to help define further beyond just the assets in the trust what you want done. So, and again, all these are post-RV discussions that we will have, and everyone's going to be going in a different direction. They have different amounts of currencies. They have different family situations. They are different ages. They have different objectives. They have different concerns. And so that's when the technical estate planning is going to take place. Pre-RV, it's kind of cookie cutter. We establish the trust. We assign the currencies to it. We acquire that wealth. And then the heavy lifting begins, including concerns such as yours.
So later, when the time comes and you potentially you pay off, houses, and, now they're free and clear. You want to allow children, to reside in those houses, but I want the ownership to remain in the name of the trust, because
it would remain in the trust.
Yeah, right. Okay, yeah, that's my intent. But once myself and my husband, the settlers, as we're getting up there in age, and essentially, do you have to dissolve the trust and establish a new one with new settlers?
No. And as a matter of fact, you mentioned letting someone live in your home. I'll go you one better. You could just purchase outright. Let's say you had 3 children. You could purchase 3 homes owned by the trust and allow the children to live in those homes on the condition that they do all the upkeep. They paint it, they make sure the landscapings, they do all of that. So there's a lot of things you can do, and we can get into technical discussions about what the implications are. Another thing would be, theoretically, if you buy a $300,000 house and let your children live in it, we'll say, well, my other child has a home and wants to stay in that home. I'm going to give them $15,000 a year from the trust. I have another child that doesn't have a home, doesn't make a lot of money, so I'm not going to give them $15,000 a year. I'm going to buy a home. It's owned by the trust, and they get to live in that home for free, and that's equivalent to $15,000. So you'll start to learn a new landscape of how to manage wealth. That's a full-time job. You have to understand the risk in investment. You're going to have to understand the tax implications and all of that. You're going to have to decide whether you're going to divide things equally, meaning everyone gets the same amount, or equitably, meaning I got a wealthy child, he's going to get less than this other child that's struggling with 4 children. So those are all personal things so it's going to be a learning curve for everybody.
Right. Okay. Yeah, and so essentially we'll maintain a relationship with Trusts Unlimited. We this is the legal entity that will. That's my hope.
You'll come to us when you want to fund a sub-trust. You'll come to us if you want to add or subtract successor beneficiaries. You'll come to us if you want to change some other terms of the trust. You'll certainly come to us if there's ever any legal issue or anyone's challenging anything you've done. But beyond that, it's just the management of your wealth. And, the simple rule is, A, pay your taxes. B, the more money you have, the less risk you need to take. And 3, be very, very careful who you do business with, because people with substantial net worths are magnets for all kinds of people, and so you want to do your due diligence, background checks, and things like that. But in terms of management changes to the trust, of course, Trusts Unlimited will be there to assist you.
Yeah, because I know locally where I am, I have tried to have a few discussions with people that, I know them personally. They're in law. And one of them specifically does revocable trusts. And I tried to, when I was asking questions about this, they were like, that sounds like a scam to me. Like you can't have control over a trust. And I listened and I took
okay.
You educated me that they're different. And not everybody is aware of this type of trust.
I know, but it's disturbing when you have an attorney say something like that, because it's a standard misconception that an irrevocable trust means you have no control. There are essentially 2 types of irrevocable trust. One is an institutional trust, and the other is what you have, something called a self-settled irrevocable trust. An institutional trust is a trust where you go to a bank or a brokerage firm and you utilize their trust to put your wealth in trust, and they are the trustee. In that scenario, your attorney is correct. Where he's missing the boat is you have a self-settled irrevocable trust. You establish the trust. You are the settler. You have selected the trustee, and you can replace the trustee at any time. That's markedly different from an institutional irrevocable trust. And unfortunately, too many people, including attorneys, don't understand what a self-settled irrevocable trust is. Yeah,
correct. And that's why my hope and what my intent is the relationship continues on with Trusts Unlimited. As time goes on, new trustees, and then as my husband and I plan for however we figure out what happens as we're aging out, and we need to figure out, what happens. All that will continue with Trusts Unlimited, and the people will come and go through that law, through Trusts Unlimited, as they move on in their life and age out. Is that right?
Right.
I'm trying to, okay.
I understand. Well, then you're correct, and that's where we are. We will assist you both pre and post RV. All right?
Yep. All right. Thank you so much.
Okay.
You have a great day.
Take care. You too. Bye-bye. Okay, our next caller is area code 405. That's 405. Go ahead.
Hello, Jim. This is Doug in Oklahoma.
Doug, how are you doing?
I'm doing well. Interesting topic today, especially about the potential membership in the WTO. For a long time, I was wondering or determining if that was one of the boxes that needed to be checked. In addition to that, are all members of the WTO are they allowed to trade on the Forex? So one of the interesting thing is that the Iranian rial was at one time tradable on the Forex, but since its devaluation, it has become such a it has lost such value that the Forex has basically put a clamp on it. So from that perspective, my question is, do you think that it is absolutely essential, or it doesn't matter that Iraq is a member of the WTO? And if so,
all right,
would that facilitate a speedy addition to the Forex?
All right, now, a currency does not have to be reinstated or revalued to be a country rather does not have to have a reinstituted or revalued global currency in order to be in the World Trade Organization. Their currency has to be out of sanction. The problem with Iran, even though the U.S. sanctions were dropped by the Biden administration, is they're under sanction because they're not Article 8 compliant with the UN. Now, the Vietnamese currency, they're in the WTO, and their currency is not revalued for decades, but they're not under sanction. So that's the difference there. The Iraq can enter the WTO without their currency revaluing, but it has to no longer be under sanction. What we've been discussing here today are all of the reasons why, not because they're out of sanction, all of the reasons they still need to reinstitute. Now, theoretically, they could go to the WTO as long as they're out of sanctions, but internally, domestically, they have to reinstate their currency or they're just going to be a failed nation. They've entered into too many. This isn't a trade deal where they're trading some good or service in exchange for another good or service, and the swap makes them even. This is a situation where they've entered into contracts to rebuild their infrastructure, which requires an exchange of a currency. So they can't continue in a program rate. That's the difference.
And do you think is there a list of known sanctions that are still in place that need to be removed in order to facilitate that?
The only sanction I'm aware of for Iraq has the U.S. Treasury has some banking sanctions, which, again, the Biden administration hasn't really been too aggressive with, but I can't think of any other sanction per se on Iraq, and I think that those go away as part of there are a lot of players here, so and the United States is sort of like introducing Iraq to the World Trade Organization. Of course, they made the big mistake of doing it with China, and China proceeded to devalue their currency, and now we have a $500 billion surplus with China every year because China is a backstabber. But that's not going to be the case with Iraq. I think it's all going to be resolved, and the currency will be completely out of sanction. They're going to reinstitute, revalue. They're going to fund their budget, their 3-year budget. They're going to fund all the international contracts for their infrastructure, and I think this is all going to come together in a relatively short period of time.
I may not be pronouncing this correctly, but could you elaborate a little bit on what OFAC or OFAC is? Office of
OFAC. Yeah, you know what? You got. I know what it is, and I just can't remember. Shucks. I've discussed it on several occasions.
Yes.
But again, that's got to do with the sanctions on I believe it's the Treasury sanctions with Iraq. Let's assume for the sake of argument that those sanctions are fully enforced. They will be lifted simultaneous, in my opinion, with official membership of Iraq to the World Trade Organization because that's already baked in the case. But I'm trying to remember what I can't remember what the acronym stands for. You know.
Oh, well, I should have looked it up.
I can't remember.
I should have looked it up before I asked the question.
Well, I should remember it, but I can't.
So
the Office of Finance, I just can't remember.
Yes. So from a historical standpoint, you did mention the historical months. As we move closer and closer to March and then into March, in my opinion, it would actually be better if this all happened I think that there are so many loose ends and so many unknowns, especially for people like myself who haven't had this type of wealth before, as to what to do and how to do it, that the extra time that the additional quarter would give us if it happened in April would be a phenomenal blessing. I know that nobody wants to wait another 35 or 40 days, but to me it would seem much more beneficial to everybody if we had time, especially if we had the ability to get any kind of reading from the IRS about how they're going to classify this revenue.
Yeah, it's complicated. Once you get into the last month of a quarter, it gets complicated with the revaluation. And, of course, there's also the argument that if the currency reinstitutes in country in March but doesn't revalue until April, you still enjoyed an increase on paper, which is technically taxable pursuant to IRS 988E2. So These are all complications that we want to avoid, because I'm sure the IRS would love to stick us with 100% penalty on a technicality like that. So, and as if you listen to my calls, I always say we're golden if it happens in the first month of a quarter. We could let the currency appreciate before we have to exchange. We don't have to pay taxes for 90 days. We can compel the IRS to confirm in writing what the actual tax is, but we may not have that luxury.
Well, I always fall back to the point that, fortunately, we are not in this alone as far as the cross-section of people in the United States that hold this. I think that many people of significant positions politically and economically hold dinars, and I don't know if there's a potential for them to add any kind of pressure or exert any for direction on this, but I always see that they don't want to screw their own. I mean, I don't think they mind screwing us, but I don't think they want to screw their own, and that's one of the things that I hope to fall back on.
Well, the other thing is, so many just regular folks like us have dinar that there's no way these people can cash in on a revaluation and withhold it from us, because they'll get clawed back. They're not going to be able to get away with that. So we're all in the same boat with the hoi polloi, and they're going to have to share the wealth this time.
Well, they don't mind sharing it as long as they can tax it. So
as long as they get theirs and they can tax us. But it's unfortunate that there are people out there running around saying that because it's a currency exchange, it's not taxable.
I know.
It is such a shame, because well-meaning, good people are going to believe them, not pay the tax, and they're going to get crucified in penalties. And so when in doubt, pay the ordinary income tax and file for a refund. No one wants to do it, but what's the alternative?
Well, one of the other fallacies is that I'm only going to exchange what I need right now, and I'm going to hold on to it for another 3 or 4 months, 5 months, 6 months, and I'll exchange it when everything settles down. And at least according to what I've read and what you've told us, that is going to be the fast track to bankruptcy, basically, if you do that, because you'll be liable for all those taxes, but they won't listen anyway. At least a couple of people that I talked to,
they have to read very carefully Section 988E2 of the Internal Revenue Code, specifically the last sentence, which says, if the profit that you would realize from the exchange exceeds $200, you must pay the tax. It doesn't say if the profit you realize from the exchange exceeds $200. It says if the profit that you would realize, meaning that the tax is due when the currency increases in value. And a lot of people are going to get burned by not understanding that distinction, and it's unfortunate, because some poor schmuck goes out there with little money, has purchased his currency, sits on them for 20 years. Finally, he has his, shot at the brass ring, and then the IRS swoops in and takes it away because he didn't pay the tax. It's just a shame, but it's going to happen.
It's going to happen.
And the IRS agents are going to sleep like a baby. They don't care.
Well, one more week down. Hopefully not too many more to go, right?
Amen, brother. Take care.
Bye-bye.
Bye-bye now. Okay, our next caller is area code 312. That's 312. Go ahead.
Hey, Jim. Les in Chicago.
Hey, Les, what's up? Same to you, brother.
Nothing much, man. I don't have Zim, but I was asked to ask a question for regarding what was that thing? Something about payout scheduled payouts.
Oh yeah, there's some talk. There's talk that if the Zim goes, the leverage is so dramatic that it'll be paid out in an annuity. There won't be a lump sum.
Okay. And the other thing was to ask if that was a real thing, because you said something about the bank not being able to hold your money.
Right. Well, that holding lump sums is different than in other words, if there's an annuity payout, it's not coming from the bank, it's coming from the Federal Reserve. The thinking is that the leverage with the Zim, if it's for real, is so huge that it would create hyperinflation. And so it would have to be paid out in an annuity form in order to try to control the money supply. Now, I hold Zim, but if I had to dump one of the currencies right now and not look back, it would be the Zim. And if I could only hold one currency, it would be the dinar. And maybe I got that wrong, but that's just my opinion if that's what I had to do. Now, there has been some talk lately that the Zim is going to have a gold-backed currency. Well, if they're going to have a gold-backed currency, there's no way they could fund all of these Zim notes. There's not, they can't do it. So that to me was the affirmation that the Zim is on shaky ground. I've had people call me from time to time that say, oh, they got it. The only thing they have is Zim. They have a ton of Zim. And I say, you know what, I'm not telling you to sell your Zim. I'm just saying go buy some dinar. You got to have some dinar. You're sitting on the Zim, and you're going to watch people go to the bank and exchange their dinar, and you're sitting on the Zim. So go buy some dinar.
Last week, thanks for that. Last week, it was reported on the news that some guy had broke into some place and stole 200, I can't remember how many zeros were there, but it was of the Zim Zimbabwe notes, and they've stolen it. Now, how would something like that happen if someone steals that much currency?
Well, they're going to have. Yeah, but what are they going to do? They're going to go to the bank, and as I said, we know what the leverage is on the Zim. So if the Zim ever goes, we're talking a lot of money. Who's going to walk into a bank with just say 10, 100 trillion Zim notes and no proof of purchase? You think the bank? Yeah. What the bank's going to do is pick up, say, we're going to go to the back room and calculate what this is worth, and then they're going to call Interpol and say, hey, we got another one.
Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, it's just. I mean, the guy might have stolen it, but I don't know, what he thinks how he can exchange it.
Pennsylvania burglar stole 1, 2. That's million, billion, trillion, and then another. So it's got 15 zeros. 2 plus 15 zeros. So million, billion, trillion. What's after a trillion?
Yeah. Well, yeah. What's he like I said? What's he going to do? What's he going to do with it?
Yeah. Okay.
I mean, it's he can't exchange it. I mean, he might be able to offload it to someone that thinks they can exchange it, but he's going to get virtually nothing. It's he's not going anywhere with it.
And then it's got serial numbers too. So
yeah, and of course, exactly, they know what was stolen. So that, like I said, the guy's going to walk in with that. The guy's going to look at the screen. He's going to see that little red dot in the upper left-hand corner, and he's going to say, "Okay, we're going to run these through the Delaware machine, and then they're going to go in there and call Interpol, and that'll be the end of that guy."
Some guy in Pennsylvania. All right, man, I'm done. That's all I got.
Okay. You take care. Bye-bye now.
You too. Bye-bye.
Well, Les was our last caller for this afternoon. Again, I'd like to thank all of you for taking the time to listen to this call. Again, if the things we've discussed are of interest, I strongly suggest you contact us to get our initial no-obligation package. You can contact us either by email or phone. Email address is trusts with an S, unlimited LLC at gmail.com. Our phone service is 307-274-4122. Contact us. We'll get our initial package out to you as soon as possible. I will be on the phone all day today, and as long as it's necessary to contact the rest of you, we're doing the best we can. Certainly there'll be a call next Wednesday, and certainly if something of a dramatic nature happens between now and then, we'll try to get out an emergency email and schedule an emergency conference call. But failing that, we'll be back next Wednesday, noon Eastern, 9 a.m. Pacific. Thanks so much for listening, everyone, and have a great week.